afternoon, and thanks for joining us on this HOA Leader video chat with two of our experts. Today, we're discussing whether a board should grant an owner's request for an extension to allow their RV to remain in their driveway, but there are two twists. The first is this wasn't the first time these owners had violated this governing document provision. And second, rather than make the request to the board directly, the homeowners emailed the entire community to raise this issue. So we are joined by Bill Worrell of Florida and Phaedra Howard of Minnesota. So Bill, why don't you start us on this?
Absolutely, Gabrielle, and thank you. For us in management and supporting the board of directors, we always begin in the violation process with ensuring that that process were actually executed properly. So when was the violation reported? Were the unit owners served with a violation notice, or was it a phone call? What does that process look like? Is there a timestamped photo? So before we can get to any granting of exceptions and what is the next step, then that's got to be outlined in that process. And I think there's also an opportunity here just quickly to ensure that you may find yourself with a gap in your own process, and this could be an opportunity to learn from that and fill that gap so that these types of questions and confusion don't come up again.
Phaedra, what do you think?
Thanks, Gabriella. So my first question would be, the question was whether or not the board should grant an extension. And so the first thing that I would want to know is whether the governing documents even allow the board the flexibility or the authority to grant exceptions to the provisions. And a lot of them do in this type of situation. It might say something to the effect of, owners may not park an RV in their driveway for longer than, say, 72 hours or whatever without board permission. So if it says that, then obviously the board has discretion to grant extensions, but they may not. And so that would be my first question. And first thing that I would want to look to as an attorney is, what is the board's authority here? Can they even grant an exception before talking about whether or not they should?
Okay, briefly, what do you think about the whole idea of this is not the first time they've apparently violated this provision? Can the board do double duty and, double penalize them? Bill?
Right, so that's the clue, right? The clue is, if this has happened before with the same homeowners, was an extension perhaps granted? Was that proper? Was that part of the process? Was that supported by the documents, as Phaedra's mentioning, appropriately? So you'll do yourself a favor and your community a favor if you follow those documents. If they don't allow you to grant an exception, there's no exception to be granted. There's just no basis. There's no substantiating that. If they do allow you to grant an exception, then just be vigilant and be consistent on that. Once you know that you're going to consider this, it's not just for this specific situation. It is for all future situations that may occur, all future boards where you're now setting a precedent in the community. So that's the important thing to think about. Think about that big picture and the future as well.
Phaedra, what do you think about the prior violation?
Certainly that can play a factor. It depends on the board's policy. I have a lot of associations that have it written right into their rules that, the first violation is, either a warning or a certain amount of fine. And then when you have subsequent violations of the same provisions within a certain time frame, then those fines escalate and maybe they double or whatever the situation might be. So, that's very common to have escalating penalties for repeat violations. Certainly these people can't claim that they're not aware of the rule. The fact that they were the ones who reached out, not to the board, but to the other owners saying, oh, we should be given an extension, reflects the fact that they knew that what the rule was and that they violated it. So I think that can play into the board's consideration as far as whether or not they grant an exception this time, if that's allowed under the documents. You need to take it on a case-by-case scenario, and somebody who has repeat violations is not necessarily in the same situation as somebody who's only done it once. So that can be taken into consideration, but as Bill mentioned, you got to do it carefully and make sure that you're not setting bad precedent.
Great. All right, listeners, thanks for joining us. We hope you'll join us again next month for a new topic. And thanks, Phaedra, and thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks.